Welcome back into the Turo Hospital studio. I'm Brooke Kirchhofer alongside Nick Underhill and Mike Triplett. The ramp-up period is here for the Saints' first preseason game. We saw another heavy 2-minute period and dime package, and also which safety is bursting onto the scene. We're going to get into all of that in the show.
Yeah, it's been a solid week of practice heading into the preseason game. I think the defense is starting to step up and do its thing a little bit. And you know what's always doing its thing? PJ's Coffee, our presenting sponsor. Make sure you go check out one of their many locations. And as Brooke said, we are coming to you from the Turo Hospital studio. And if you need to get somewhere, go stop by my guy, Matt Bowers. They have car dealerships all over the Gulf South. Best car dealers that you can find. They'll take care of you. That's where we get all of our cars. So make sure you go and check them out. The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out.
For fast relief coffee.
Mike Hoss here. When the AC goes out and it's hot outside, every second counts. For over 40 years, Keefe's AC Heating and Electrical has helped thousands of families stay cool in the sizzling hot months. Keefe's Get You Cool in 3 hours or less guarantee is what our customers love the most. On the North or South Shore, call Keefe's. We'll get you cool in 3 hours or less guaranteed.
Keefe's Air Conditioning and Heating.
And now electrical.
For fast relief call Keefe.
Moe's Barbecue is located in Metairie. They have your game day needs taken care of. Whether you're tailgating or watching the Black and Gold or LSU at home with friends, Moe's has you covered. Order pulled pork, wings, ribs, sides, and more. Come in with the family for lunch and dinner as our kids' meals will please even the pickiest of eaters. Tailgating, parties at home, lunch and dinner, Moe's Barbecue will handle it all. Moe's Original Barbecue, 1101 North Causeway Boulevard between 48th and 49th Street in Metairie. Call 504-407-5333 for your catering order today. 504-407-5333. Moe's Original Barbecue in Metairie. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. You better call Botto if you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, maritime and Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims. You better call Botto at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. All right, let's get into the show.
Let's get into our lead topic presented by Friend & Company Jewelers. Friend & Company Jewelers has a brand new engagement salon. Go check that out. And while you're there, check out their new fleur-de-lis earrings and necklace that I have on now. They are specially priced for NOF listeners. All right, training camp could be on the move for the Saints in 2024. Dennis Allen was asked about how this record heat has pretty much impacting training camp so far. They've had to move inside several times. And he was also asked, too, about these soft tissue injuries, if it's heat-related. He said they would more or less move because of the construction in the building. I don't know if I'm buying that. I think they maybe do want to get out of the heat and maybe reduce some of these soft tissue injuries. So if they do move, where are they going?
I mean, I think everything's probably on the table at that point, and they'll do their due diligence and find different locations. I kind of like the fans being able to see training camp. So, I mean, for the fans, it's not a good thing. I mean, I'm not going to try to spin it. I mean, I think that the fans like to see the team practice. There's good crowds out there every single time. It makes sense from a a health standpoint. So that would, there'd be merit to that, of course. I mean, I look, even when we see them now, when they're inside, they're having more intense, I think, better competition, better practice, all that stuff. So, we'll see how it goes with this in the future. But, I think there's pros and cons to both sides.
You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. I mean, they wouldn't normally be talking about their plans to move training camp in 2024 this early, probably. If it wasn't, I mean, they know that they've got the construction scheduled. But, yeah, that could be an excuse to do something they need to do. And, look, that is a tough PR move sometimes. So I think they're getting out ahead of it, warning people ahead of time. But, yeah, look, I mean, I think the best of both worlds would be go do the first 2 weeks somewhere when you're in the dog days like you are now, and then after that first preseason game gets played, then come home, make sure you have 4 or 5 practices open to the fans before camp is over. But yeah, look, when they went to West Virginia, I mean, we heard it over and over again, like, oh, it's, summer camp, or, they're not taking it seriously enough. We were talking today about possible locations. Derek Carr used to train with the Raiders in Napa Valley, California, wine country. We were joking, you're not allowed to do that. You have to go 17-0 before you're allowed to say, we're going to go training camp in wine country.
I wouldn't mind that.
But there are real benefits to being able to get the work in. You don't want guys, whether it's soft injuries or if it's just cramping or dehydration or having to cut practice a half hour short. They want to get the snaps in. Now, look, there are a lot of players who talk about the mental toughness that comes with this. Pete Werner was just saying it today, and we've heard this a bunch. Like, I want to feel like I've got a little extra on everyone else because I went through this. And I believe in all that, and there's a balance to all of it. But, yeah, look, they're about to spend, the better part of a week in Costa Mesa living like the good half lives. And if it's a week, if it's 2 weeks, if it's 3 weeks, absolutely that would not be a bad idea.
And I think a lot of it, too, is it's not just the heat, but the logistics of it all. And it's really expensive. I was talking with somebody off to the side about how much it used to be for them to go to the Greenbrier, and the numbers are outrageous. But let's just play hypotheticals. What would make the most sense for the Saints next year? Let's say construction does push them out. Where do they go?
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea at all. I mean, it's somewhere that's not hot. Just somewhere that's not hot. There's places to sleep that's not terrible to be, that has good facilities that they can work out in. I mean, I think the standards for NFL teams have even changed from like back when they used to go to like Wisconsin back in the day. Like, players expect more. They need more. The training programs are more sophisticated. Like, you got, like, Matt Ray needs to be able to do his data studies somewhere. You need to just have a lot of stuff. It's probably the Greenbrier. Like, the Greenbrier has been built to host NFL teams. That's probably the place that makes the most sense. Maybe Dallas leaves like California at some point and you slide in there, but I couldn't even begin to try to put a finger on where they're going to end.
Yeah, and he did rule out, Dennis Allen ruled out Millsaps. Somebody jokingly said he said it will not be. He was
Bobby
just miserable.
Aber about jumped off his chair.
I told him he should have held that over the team and threatened that they're going to go to Millsaps if they don't have a good year. But he hated that just as much as the
that'd
players.
Be pointless. Like, if you're going to leave, why would you go somewhere hot? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. So he doesn't want it to be an old school, like, back to the old days. Nobody's going to have any water and they're going to have 2-a-days. That's not what they're talking about. But yeah, and the other thing that's important with the Greenbrier, the reason they like that so much with Oxnard, California, where the Cowboys have, is ample hotel rooms right there, multiple fields, ample meeting room space, all that kind of stuff, which is why a lot of teams usually go to a college campus. But they've got plenty of time to research it. But yeah, they will not let anything that they need organizationally slide just to go away to training camp.
Yeah, let's get into some attendance reports here. So these are the guys who are still sidelined with injuries. Some of these are minor. Demario Davis, Andres Pete, Rashid Shaheed, Traquan Smith, Jesse James, and Lucas Kroll all not practicing today. Some transactions. Coda Martin was waived. That was injury related, and they signed tight end JP Holtz. But my big question mark when I'm looking at this list is, the preseason game is this Sunday. Dennis Allen said starters will be playing against the Chiefs. So with Demario Davis out, who is starting next to Pete Werner Sunday?
I think it's going to be Nephi Sewell. Like, I think he's the guy that's running ahead of that pack. I think DeMarco Jackson will get a good look in there too. Like, they've been putting Nephi in there early, and then DeMarco's in like 2 snaps later. So it is an honest rotation at that spot. So I'm expecting it to look that way going forward. They need somebody to step up in that role. I think it's a huge issue still. It's something that needs to be settled. There's a little bit of potential there. There's not anything known at that spot yet, though. So there is kind of like a weird little silver lining. You know what you have in Demario. Yeah. Demario's going to play. He's going to be solid. This gives you a chance to really kind of see how that battery works together with him and, whoever and Pete Werner. And I think that's going to be a good look for the defense.
My gut actually was probably just the opposite, that I feel like DeMarco Jackson has probably started with the ones more and then Nephi rotates in, but it's probably pretty close to 50-50 at this point. And the other thing they've been doing is Pete Werner has mostly stayed at the weak side, and DeMarco in particular, I think, has pretty much only played Mike. But Pete Werner will flip then, and he'll play some Mike sometimes and some other guys. So they're trying those combinations out. And meanwhile, Zach Baun is playing Sam when they have 3 linebackers on the field. But then every once in a while, he'll stay on and be one of just 2 linebackers. I think that group has separated itself from everyone else, though. We've heard good things about Ryan Connolly. He gets a lot of snaps at Sam with the 2s. I guess there's still time for him to pass up Zach Baun. But I feel like right now it's DeMario and Pete, Zach Bond playing Sam, and then DeMarco Jackson and Sewell are the guys that we have seen sort of getting by far the most looks. They will get the first opportunity to lock down those roles in the preseason games, but it doesn't mean they can't be beat out. Dennis Allen just today basically called it a wide open competition.
Absolutely. And our moment of the day presented by New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company, Alontae Taylor. We can finally talk about him positively on the show. Chris Olave has been kind of getting the better of him in these one-on-one drills and even in 7-on-7. He had our play of the day when Nick wrote about it earlier today. He had great coverage against Chris Olave in 11-on-11. What steps did he take forward today in practice?
I think it's just he's just gonna have to keep getting reps and keep getting tested. And he's someone that can cover well. He was somebody that got beat sometimes last year too, and we've talked about that a lot. He was on the show talking about it himself. Like there were reps that he lost where the ball just didn't come his way, and I think just there's going to be a cleaning up process. You got to go out, you got to do things, you got to correct it, come back, do it again, do it better. And I think he's someone that still has all the potential in the world. I still think he has more upside than anybody on the team other than Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback. The production just has to be there consistently. But yeah, he's had some good moments. I thought the day before there were a couple rough ones. Okay, you went, fixed them, cleaned them up. You're back out there doing it. I still think that's wide open, though. I really do. I think it's wide open there at that spot. And I think, whoever plays better in these games has a chance to lock it down. But he needs all those moments because Paulson is the guy to kind of beat out. Like he's the incumbent, and you got to just be actually better than him consistently. So it's just finding consistency for him.
And Taylor's a gamer. I mean, we've mentioned this before. That's when he gets everyone excited, is when he brings that energy to the field. So maybe he'll outshine Paulson in the
hold up, though. The
game.
energy wasn't enough to keep him on last year, though. Like you actually do have to cover. Like DA praised his energy every single week and then put him on the bench.
But what I was going to say is the thing that Taylor was uncanny at last year is they would test him deep every week, and he just never got beat by the deep ball, which almost felt like luck. Like nobody can hold up that much against the deep ball. And that is one thing that, even though he's not shining in one-on-ones and even 7-on-7s, the deep ball hasn't really burned him in training camp yet either. And that was today. They tested him deep, and that was probably one of his best coverage snaps of the entire offseason that we
was definitely lucky last year. Like there's go routes where he got beat and the pass wasn't there. Like there were played curls, a lot of curls where he got beat and the pass just wasn't there. Like, so it was luck. And I think in this sample size, this setting, like luck isn't always going to be there. So like some of those things that he was working on and still working on are showing up. And then the important thing is you got beat on this yesterday, or you getting beat on it today. And a lot of times he isn't. So, I mean, that's the important thing. But I do think, and I've been saying this since last year, like I think that there was a false sense of maybe where he was going to be coming into this season at, just due to some weird variances that existed because like he just wasn't exposed enough. And there's things that he's cleaning up, but I like where he's going. I like the direction.
You've said that a million times, that he could be better this season and statistically worse.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't help but, I mean, like,
The preseason games are going to help us answer a lot of these questions. And this is one guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing. We saw a lot of dime today in practice. Jordan Howden was working as the third safety in that package. For me, it's, can he solidify himself in that role? We're going to see as preseason goes along. We still have a lot of time left in training camp. And even Dennis Allen said, we're going to throw everything we can at this kid and see how he handles it. It's really the ball's in his court. They want them to prove him right.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I like him. I like the way he plays. But I do think it is a really tight competition. Lonnie Johnson Jr., Hugo Amadi, Jonathan Abram, Lonnie Johnson Jr., like all those dudes are making plays. Smoke Monday. Yeah. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on. But I do think he is working ahead of him. I think it was pretty clear today. They're in the dime package. He's out there. Sometimes, like when they go to the second team, he's not part of that. But when one of the starters have been out, he's been in there with the starters. He's in there with the top dime package. I think they want him to win too. It's not just that he's ahead of him. I think that there's a preference for the rookie to be the guy that kind of locks down that job.
Usually we can glean things from usage, and that's the point I was making with Jackson and Nephi Sewell getting so many opportunities instead of it being a constant rotation. Safety usage is so weird because it has been almost every practice, every team session when they go to the twos, Lonnie Johnson and Jonathan Abram are the twos safeties, but Ugo Amadi is the twos nickel. And every time they've gone to dime, even the first time they did dime, it was Jordan Howden. They're not giving them, they're not mixing and matching at all those positions. So what do they value most is interesting, but I would have to think they value dime most. I mean, I think that's the most telling thing of all. That's the one they're putting on the field with the ones in 2-minute situations,
Yeah.
which are as important as anything you're going to do in pass defense.
Have to throw in a curveball. This wasn't on the rundown, but I want to ask you guys, who is the most to prove on defense in the first preseason game?
So I think it's the people that we've been talking about. I think it's Jordan Howden, it's Paulson Adebo, it's Alontae Taylor, it's the linebackers. I think those are the biggest questions on the team right now. So yeah, you focus in on the battles at first because those are the headlines. I think there's a lot of things on defense that need to be answered though. But I think for me, some of those issues come a little bit more down the line in the other games. Coming into it right away, I just want to see these things we're talking about on this show kind of just come to light, be solidified, and know what we're talking about moving forward.
Yeah, the places where they're competing for jobs is always what we're keyed on, but it's what the Saints are keyed on too. They need to decide who's going to be on the field, and you nailed it. I mean, I think corner and I think backup linebacker are probably the big two. I don't know. They rotate so much on the defensive line. I don't know how much it matters who wins competitions. I do want to see Brian Brzee earning, how many snaps is he going to earn? How big of a role is he going to earn right away? But I mean, I guess the other one is Carl Granderson and Peyton Turner at defensive end, because they have been taking turns every other day in practice. I thought it was interesting. They did not get the or treatment in when they put the first unofficial depth chart in, and I think that's maybe a testament to Carl Granderson has continued to look good, picking up where he left off last season. But Peyton Turner's trying to turn that into an or by the end of the preseason.
Yeah, for me, it's Isaiah Foskey. He's had a pretty quiet camp so far, and given where he was drafted this year, I think we all expected to see a little bit more of him. Like we've seen from Brian Brzee, he's kind of lived up to that first-round draft pick. But as you mentioned, we're going to get into the Saints' first unofficial depth chart coming up after the break. And how did Jimmy Graham look during 2-minute drill? We'll get into all of that after this.
Now, at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company, get our $10.99 shrimp remoulade combos with zesty shrimp remoulade and fried shrimp or catfish for only $10.99. And did you hear? Soft-shelled crabs are back at New Orleans Hamburger and Seafood Company.
Life is full of unexpected events, which can come with unplanned expenses. Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union has a variety of personal loan products to meet your needs. Whether it's treating yourself to something new, paying off an unexpected expense, or consolidating debt, we are here to help. With rates as low as 8.5% APR, a personal loan with Jefferson Financial can help. Don't let life's curveball impact your financial happiness. Apply today at jeffersonfinancial.org. Membership restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
At Toro, we were born for moments like this. From bringing new bundles of joy into the world, to delivering what new mothers need to stay healthy. Born to keep hearts beating strong, and to keep seniors active and healthy for years to come. Because at Toro, we deliver more than babies. From heart care to cancer care, and newborns to seniors. At Toro, we're born to care.
Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
Turn up the heat with new games from the lottery. For a sizzling start, play Hot 8. Win up to $8,000. Twist your way to winnings with Cherry Twist. Win up to $18,000. It's not your parents' crossword. Play Crossword Explosion. Win up to $30,000. Bigger, better, top prizes. Play $250,000 money bags. Top prize on this game, a whopping $250,000. Enjoy all 4 hot new games from the lottery.
Welcome back to the Turo Hospital studio. It's time for our Martin Wine and Spirits question of the day. Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a wide selection of handpicked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and more. John Ernst asked, in season, if the Saints had to go to their third quarterback for a few games, would it be Haener or Hill? Hypothetical, I hope it never happens. And I feel like this is a good question right now based on the preseason coming up. And we're going to get to maybe not answer some of these questions, but at least see what Jake Haener really is about.
Well, you don't need Napa Valley when you got Martin One in Spirit. So no need to go out there and practice. You can just go up to Uptown and get yourself whatever you need. And I think if the Saints needed someone, they'd probably go to Taysom Hill. Right now, that's where I'm going. I need to see a whole lot more from Jake Haener. I like everything we've seen in training camp. I think that he's probably pretty good. If you're putting him on like a backup quarterback scale, I've seen some tweets where people are getting like out of pocket and they're like, they think he's the heir apparent at this point. I think it's wildly premature to even be thinking those kind of things, but he's definitely someone that I have circled is probably being the backup for quite a while at the very least. And maybe, you never know beyond that. But I think right now, if there's an injury and you got to go to somebody, I would be pretty surprised if you're down to QB3, if it's Jake Haener and not Taysom Hill.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that, like, if it happens during a game, maybe it's Haener, and when they have a week to game plan, maybe it becomes Hill. And frankly, even if it is Haener, it could be a lot of Hill. Like we even saw last year with Andy Dalton. There were some games where Taysom Hill got nearly 20 snaps at quarterback. But yeah, they're not going to abandon what Taysom Hill can do at that position. But we do not have a full opinion on Jake Haener yet. He's going to be one of the most interesting things about these next 3 preseason games is how close to ready he looks.
Yeah, and I made sure to pick up on Dennis Allen said he liked his quarterback room, saying there are 4 great quarterbacks, mentioning Taysom Hill as well. So he is still a firm believer in him should Taysom Hill have to line up at quarterback. And so we mentioned we were going to get to our first unofficial depth chart. It is out. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this year's depth chart is the or.
Yeah.
Juwan Johnson or Taysom Hill, Andres Pete or James Hurst, Paulson Adebo or Alontae Taylor. Those are the only 3 I see, and those are all the most interesting camp battles that we've all been paying attention to. So based on what you saw when you heard this was coming out, what was the first thing that you were trying to look for?
I was looking at left guard 100%. I mean, I think that's the most interesting battle on the team. Is it Andres Pete or is it James Hurst? Well, it's an either or. For me, like if we're just picking them, and we should all just pick one on these oars right now heading into the game. It's not like we're locking in for the year, but heading into this game, I'm James Hurst. I think James Hurst has a chance to win that.
Well, obviously in this game, but yeah.
But I mean, like going
beyond,
into this,
exactly.
like if I had to pick one for week 1 today, I'm just going James Hurst. Andres Pete took a pay cut. He misses a lot of time. Like put the guy in there that's gonna probably play every single week at this point. I mean, Pete's just not out there right now, so it's just so easy to look to the next guy when you aren't on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times the oars are being nice to people. I mean, I don't think Dennis Allen sat down and put thought into this and turned it into anyone. I mean, a lot of times they let the PR staff make this decision too. I mean,
I disagree with that.
But sometimes they do want to make a coaching statement with it. But the oars match exactly what we're seeing in practice. I mean, when Pete was healthy, it was Hurst or Pete every other day, taking turns at that position. Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson. I don't think they know how to list Taysom Hill on this team. So you don't really have to make a decision between them. And then the other one was Paulson Adebo or Alontae Taylor. They're taking every other day in practice. So none of those are surprises. But yeah, James Hurst, I think even before Andres Pete got hurt, I agreed with you. I think the fact that he was doing it on the very first day and Andres Pete got the second day, lets you know, and just every time they talk about James Hurst, you can tell that he's held in high esteem with this organization. I think Pete getting hurt and Pete having the injury track record, I think that's the most decisive of the 3 open battles we're talking about.
When you look at the wide receivers, so Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, Keith Kirkwood, Brian Edwards, A.T. Perry, Shaq Davis. In that order, left to right is, I'm assuming, the pecking order. Do you agree with that Keith Kirkwood and Brian Edwards are ahead of A.T. Perry so far in camp?
Yeah, that's another one, though. Veterans are often listed ahead of rookies, but it doesn't necessarily mean who's going to actually make the team. But again, that kind of goes in the order of who gets on the field first in their snap order. But that's an easy one to change in the course of one game, 1 week for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they always they want the rookies to earn it and move up. So, I mean, I look at where the veteran names are listed, and I know a lot of people like to dismiss these things and say that, they are, just whatever. But I've heard, I don't think it is just whatever. I don't think it is just whatever.
For which one?
I don't think the depth chart goes out just willy-nilly.
No, not willy-nilly.
A lot of people think that, though.
Yeah,
and you see every time it goes on Twitter, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I think maybe people think that too is because as you get further into the season, maybe the depth chart is not something that's ironed out each week.
Well,
they
yeah.
don't factor in injuries. And I think that's maybe where that comes from, is because when people look at the depth chart that maybe we post as the season goes on, people are like, that person's injured, why haven't they adjusted it? So you're saying they really are adjusting this first unofficial depth chart.
It probably won't get updated again after this game, but
Yeah.
I just don't believe that it goes out without anybody looking at it.
Okay. All right. Well, with the tight ends, we mentioned Jimmy Graham had a big day today.
Wait, no, but I want to get into this more because
right.
there have been times where we know for a fact that something was done on the depth chart as a coaching decision, like as a signal. I'm curious, did you see, I'm not asking you to give away, did you see anything on this particular depth chart that felt to you like the coaches are making a statement with this?
Left guard.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think, except for tight end. I think tight end's just out of like respect for the people. But
yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't think anything happens here. I don't think that it's just a PR thing. I think that it's probably something that's looked at. And if there's crazy things or on crazy things, like there are adjustments made. I just don't believe every single time these things come out, you see the media and they're like, oh, this is like BS. Don't even look at it. No, I've heard different. Heard different.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm not disagreeing with that. But I just didn't see nothing that was on this depth chart stood out to me. If anything, I think that depth chart is being nice to Andrus Peat out of like kindness to his service. I mean, I think there's no question that right now, if you had to pick a pecking order, it's James Hurst ahead of Andrus Peat.
Yeah.
Well, the pecking order with the tight ends was pretty clear outside of the Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill. Foster Moreau would be listed as the third, Jimmy Graham as the fourth, Jesse James, Lucas Kroll. Jimmy Graham was incredibly active today in the 2-minute drill. I think he was targeted 6 times today in practice, and we've seen a lot of good things from him so far in the limited window because he has had a few vet days. But do you buy that he's the fourth tight end entering the season right now?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I kind of felt like everything that was listed was reasonable, and
Okay.
It matches what we see.
There might be some differences, but just to like wrap up, I had just like one more thought. Like the PR staff isn't replacing last year's starter at left guard with an or. You know what I mean? Like that just doesn't happen in that room. Like they aren't going to do that. Like they aren't going to make that statement. So there's things on here that I think are definitely signed off on by, people that are actually making those decisions. But yeah, I thought that the tight end depth chart was pretty fair. I think Jimmy Graham's role this season is going to be interesting too. I don't know what it's actually going to be. We saw some stuff today in the 2-minute. I think when the season starts, he's probably not going to be like the primary guy in that package. I think it's probably Juwan Johnson. But there's room for everybody to eat, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see when this roster is cut down to 53 guys, what the depth of tight end does. I think there's a really, I don't think they're going to keep a fullback. I don't think you should. I don't think it makes sense. I think you should probably just moonlight that a little bit. There's guys here that I think can block and do all the things you need your fullback to do. And I think there's just probably more value if the question is Adam Prentice or Lucas Kroll. Who's going to give you more value this season overall? I think you can do a lot of the stuff Prentice does. I wouldn't be against keeping a fullback because they find a way to get some value out of that. And there's like 2 plays a year where nobody ever covers the fullback and they score a touchdown on it. Like it just happens. But I would think it makes a lot more sense to keep a tight end instead of a fullback.
Well, it's something we've talked about when they did sign Jimmy Graham. The conversation for us kind of shifted in a few of these shows that, all right, if you're keeping 4 tight ends, if that's the goal, where is that number coming from? And we've been looking so much at the DBs, the secondary. Do they only keep 5 wide receivers instead of 6? But it is a really good point. Eliminating, what would you rather eliminate, a wide receiver or a fullback?
Well, I mean, we've tried to cut the fullback though from the 53-man roster. At least I have so many times over the years, and it hasn't happened yet. It's funny, they just signed J.P. Holtz today, who actually served as the tight end / fullback for years in Chicago. I want to know which tight end.
They were without a fullback at times last year. At
times, the initial 53-man roster. But my only curiosity is which tight end would they play in those snaps that they want to have. You've said a million times it should be Taysom Hill. Yeah. It won't be Jimmy Graham. I don't know if Lucas Kroll can do it.
It won't be Juwan.
Foster Moreau hasn't really done it. It won't be Juwan. So that would be one curiosity: is are they eliminating that position from what they like to do with it, the playback, or would they have a vision to have 5 tight ends? And like when Josh Hill was here, he could do it and did it a lot. I'm curious if they have that vision for one of the tight ends. But yeah, as far as going back to the original question about the pecking order, though, I certainly think Jimmy Graham's going to play the 4th amount of snaps of those top 4 tight ends without question. His role is going to be very limited.
Completely switching gears over to the defense. There were no interceptions or turnovers today in practice. That gets into our money segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. Ball security, of course, is always an emphasis, but the defense has really been honing in on turnovers. We continue to hear that from the coaches. Was this a bad practice for the defense then if there was no turnovers? Is that fair to say?
Well, no. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, you can't have a turnover every day, but there have been some days where we walk away and we say, one side decisively won over the other. I don't know that this was a decisive. I don't think it was a decisive loss for the defense. One of my top observations is even though they ended up getting the game-winning field goal, quote unquote, in each of those 2-minute drives that they did, I still thought the defensive line was winning against the offensive line quite a bit, getting into the backfield to disrupt a lot of things. Not enough to keep them from scoring though, but that's a thing where. I mean, the offensive line is really only missing Pete, who, as we've said, might not be a starter. But I need to start seeing the offensive line have their days where they're holding the defensive line at bay.
Yeah, I think the camp has been interesting because I think it was offense, and then it's like we hit a midway point.
Yeah.
And what are we at, day 12? Like it was like offense was the first half, and then I feel like the defense has played ahead of them like the last 5 or 6 practices really. Like I'm sure there's a day or two in there where the offense might have had a slight edge, but if you're just taking the totality of like the second half of camp, I think the defense has been a lot better. And it took them a little bit maybe to get fully up to speed, click, and get doing what they're doing. And that makes sense. You got new coaching staff and all that stuff. Like I think it probably took a little time for everybody to settle in. But yeah, I like where the defense has transitioned. I mean, today's turnover list, but overall we've seen a lot more turnovers. I think in this camp, there's been an emphasis on it. I think it's probably premature to say this, but my feeling is that the changes on the defensive coaching staff are going to net positive results overall. I think we see it in the secondary immediately. I think the way Marshawn Lattimore is practicing and playing is a direct result of the new coaches on that side of the ball, Joe Woods, Marcus Robertson. I think there's a lot of stuff happening on that side that's very, very encouraging. I think they're going to be a little bit better this year. Where I'm a little bit reserved is I think the pass rushes look good, and I don't know. Yeah. I just don't know if it's because the O-line is bad, right? And if the defensive line is that good. It's just, when you're swim moving, Landon Young, it's a little bit different. So I don't know. I like where they're headed though, but I'm not. I think they had to stop today, like Mike said, and there was kind of a penalty or whatever, and they got to kick the field goal.
It was. So. We would have been talking about how the defense finished the day with a 4 and out, but they got to redo it before. Or they got a penalty where they got a fresh set of downs, and then they ended up just moving 10 more yards into field goal range. But I mean, this is one of my top observations. It'll be a shameless plug for a story that I just put on the website too, though. That my biggest concern, my 2 biggest concerns, the whole team heading into this training camp was offensive line, but that was mostly about health, and defensive line, and that was partly about personnel. I think it's been unmistakable. We're seeing them play fast. Mm-hmm. We're seeing them play attacking, aggressive. We're seeing them get in the backfield. I think Malcolm Roach has been one of the standouts of camp. He was an afterthought for me, I'll admit. I've talked on here about how much I like what I've seen from Peyton Turner and Carl Granderson, 2 guys who stood out. And what I wrote about is that's by design. Some of these guys, they went in with Matt Ray and they decided to have him lose 8-10 pounds. With Todd Grantham and the coaching philosophy, they've talked to them about being a little more attacking and aggressive instead of read and react. All subtle changes. DA stands by his defense, and he made it clear. We like the defense we play, and we like our philosophy on defense. We've been good for a long time, but he admitted we probably went overboard and getting a little too heavy last year, and that also went into picking Colin Saunders in free agency, picking Brian Brzee in the draft. It's a more athletic front. Will that translate when everybody has the pads on and you have to actually tackle the quarterback to the ground for it to count as a win? That's what we'll see in these preseason games. But they are definitely moving at a faster pace.
All right, before we head out of here, practice number 12, what was your biggest takeaway from
I thought Will Lutz had a great day. He did. He came in. And it was funny because he was saying the last time we talked to him that it's more than just coming in and kicking six field goals in a row. There's a lot more to kicking than that. You've seen it the last 2 days. It's coming in off the sideline, actually hitting it in a real situation in these 2-minute drills. Blake Groupie struggled. Mm-hmm. Will Lutz goes 3 for 3, finishes 9 for 9 for the day. By far his best practice camp, just because the situations just demanded a little bit more than what he's had to show so far.
Yeah.
Maybe his second best, the other one being 2 days ago when they also did the same thing. He made one like from 50 yards in a situation, or no, the 62-yarder, and then he had to make the one to keep them from running gassers at the end of the play. So he's been feeling it the last couple of days.
Yeah, and they're going to be in the Dome pretty soon. They're going to be practicing in the Dome Friday. They do have another practice. I believe this one will be all indoors, so they're going to avoid the heat at least for Thursday. But tune back in and keep up with us on NewOrleans.Football for all of the latest on the New Orleans Saints, and we'll see you next time.